Welcome to December. There are 22 shopping days left until Christmas. What? 21? Oh, okay. Like, wow. Is it priority? Okay, yes, I got it. It is. But we're going to celebrate a different birthday. We'll celebrate that one too. Gifts are something that we all get. There's something that we all give. But the question that we're going to kind of look through and consider this Christmas season isn't what can we give somebody else or what are we going to get in terms of a gift, but whether or not you and I can be the gift. And so this is a good thing because it's not one of those that's really difficult to budget. You don't have to buy yourself. It's not one of those that's difficult to find because we know where we are. At least we should know where we are. You don't have to worry about overnight delivery or anything because wherever you are, you're there. Okay, and so when we go through this be the gift, there's going to be a few things that we look at of how we can be the gift this Christmas. And before we do, and we've been doing different verses every time we do a new series. We're going to do one that you will probably see on some of your Christmas cards that arrive in the mail, or maybe you'll even put it on yours. You'll hear it. There's songs about it and stuff like that. And so, if you wouldn't mind saying it with me, it is from Isaiah, which is in the Old Testament, and it's from Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. So here's what it says, and you can say it with me. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And so this is talking about Jesus. It's what we call prophetic. And so even though this was hundreds of years before Jesus ever showed up, Isaiah is talking about the Savior who is going to be born hundreds of years later. And when that child is born, the Son will be given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. But as far as gifts go, we're going to go basically to the story of Luke, the one that if you watch a Charlie Brown Christmas, it's the one that Linus recites. And so you can make your way over there to Luke chapter 2. If you're following along on YouVersion, that would be good. You can keep up with the verses because we're going to start there, but there's other verses that are coming along. Otherwise, just look in your Bible, make sure that I'm not lying or pulling your leg. Now, we all know that there are different kinds of gifts. Some people ask for clothes. Some people say anything but. Some people want toys. They want big adult toys that are thousands of dollars. And some of us, we go to the dollar store and get toys for other people because it's, dirty Santa season and you go get something. When it comes to us being a gift, though, you guys probably know that you could be a gift of a friend. And so, but there's all kinds of different friends that we can be, right? Some of you have friends who, at just the right time, they show up and they know that you're having a bad time, and so they're friends that comfort. Some of you are struggling and you need a little bit of encouragement, and so you get a friend who's an encourager. Or maybe you're being an idiot, and so you've got a friend who's not going to bother to pretend that that's not true. They're going to actually come and challenge you and say, look, you're acting like an absolute fool. Cut it out. Now, these are all different kinds of friends, because what you don't need is when you need somebody to comfort you, you don't need the friend who comes and says, you're being like an idiot, suck it up and get over it. And what you don't need when you're doing something stupid is a friend who comes along and encourages you. Keep it up, buddy, good job. Really proud of you, the way that you're totally disrespecting your family. But they're talking about the same kind of thing. We're talking about friends. So let's look at Scripture. I said we were going to be in Luke, and so in Luke chapter 2, and we're going to pick up where the shepherds are. So Luke chapter 2, and we're just going to do 8 to 14. Here's what it says. Luke chapter 2, 8 to 14. And in the same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. And the angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased." And if you look kind of at the beginning of the story where the shepherds are out there and then the angels come, and then what happens? The glory of the Lord shines around them. And so what we're going to talk about today is being the gift, but being specifically the gift of life, of light, okay? Of light. So I was going to do a quiz. I was going to have you take out your phone and ask you some questions about light. And then I realized, no, I didn't want to burst my fantasy bubble because I knew a lot of this, and I didn't want to quiz you and find out that you knew a lot too, because then I wouldn't feel as smart as I did. So I'm just going to tell you, and if you know, you just shake your head, and if you didn't, cool, you'll be educated. But did you know that light is fast? It's like super fast. Does anybody know how fast light is? Go ahead, this is the interactive part. Speed of light. And how fast is that speed of light? 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. That's what Tyler says. Well, it's actually, and he might be right, I don't know. He's smarter than me. That's why I didn't ask. It's 186,212 feet per second. 186,000 feet a second. And it's considered a constant. Okay, in Einstein's theory of relativity, E equals mc squared, the speed of light squared. It's a constant. Doesn't matter if you're moving or not, but that's the speed of light. You know that light is something that is actually directional. It goes in a direction, which means that light actually moves. It's not just something that is. Okay, and it moves 186,000 miles a second. But we turn on a light, we turn on a switch, and it's just there. That's because it's super fast. It's like a superhero. Now, did you know that light has 2 natures? That light is both a particle and a wave. It has 2 natures. Kind of like you and I. Those of us who are followers of Jesus, we have 2 natures. We have the sin nature. That's the one we were born into. And now we have a new nature. And they coexist. Like, how can we be this and that? But it is. And so light has 2 natures. So when light moves, it moves in 2 different ways. It moves like a particle and it moves like a wave. And I'm telling you this because as we start figuring out what it looks like to be the gift of light, if you're taking notes, you can write this down. The first and the most important thing is that light moves to where it's dark. Light moves to where it's dark. In other words, wherever light goes, darkness isn't. And it's because light is moving there. So wherever light moves to, suddenly darkness is gone. But light moves into the darkness and then it's no longer darkness. And so we know this from the very beginning. If you go back to Genesis, in Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning the earth was formless and void. And the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the deep. And then God said in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3 and 4, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. Okay, so light is kind of a picture of what God has done. He sends light into the darkness. He separates the darkness from the light. I don't know if any of you ever sat out in a dark place and looked for satellites in the sky. They look like moving stars. Okay, some of you have done that. We used to do that when I was growing up in Minnesota. We'd go to the cabin and we'd all jump out on the pontoon, and if the bugs weren't too bad, you'd go to the middle of the lake and you'd just lay on the pontoon and you'd look up. So however many people were around you, you'd look up and you'd try and find one of these satellites, which, just like I said, it looks like a star, and it just moves. And what it is it's a satellite, one of those man-made things that we throw up in the sky, and it circles around. And somebody would say, oh, I see one, and it's there. Well, okay, imagine, like I'm pointing that direction, and it's only, a few hundred miles away, so they should know exactly what I'm pointing at, right? Because there's no other blinking lights up in the sky. So what we figured out that you could do is you could take a flashlight. And it's almost like, if you have a good flashlight, it's almost like this monstrous lightsaber. And so if you want to find a satellite, you just turn on the light and you go, shoom, it's right there. It's like having a little laser pointer. And you can find it. Everybody can find it. Doesn't matter where you can, because the light moves into the darkness. And wherever it goes, it's not dark anymore, and you can just follow it all the way up and find where those things are. So it's a flashlight. You just use it for pointing. And so, in the beginning, God said, let there be light. And there was light, and he separated the light from the darkness. But the cool thing is, Jesus was the light. And so if you go to John, the beginning of John, chapter 1. And a lot of times, this is where I started. I was actually quoting it wrong because I thought Genesis, and in the beginning was the Word. That's how John starts. And in John chapter 1, starting in verse 4, here's what it says. In him, it's talking about Jesus, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it, because the light goes into the darkness. Excuse me. Verse 6. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. And so John is going to tell people about the light, who is Jesus. And it says, John in verse 8, he was not the light, but he came to bear witness about the light, to tell stories about the light, to share about the light. And then verse 9, the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. Now, that's how it starts in John. And it talks about Jesus and how Jesus is light. And so just so you know, light moves into where it's dark, and that's exactly what Jesus did when he came into this world. So when we're talking about this, when we're celebrating Christmas, we're celebrating the fact that the light has come into the darkness, that the place that we live, and we're going to talk about that, we know that there's a whole lot of darkness in the place that we live. And so, a couple things from this verse, or these couple verses. We're going to look at the first two verses this week. In the same region, there were shepherds. And they were out in the field. And they were keeping watch over their flock by night. And so you can kind of make a picture. You can kind of see what's going on there, right? Okay, there's these shepherds. They're outside. It's night, and they're watching their sheep. Like, whoop-de-doo. Now, you got to remember, if you go outside at night around here, I'm trying to think of where most people live. Most of you, if you live, you have street lights somewhere nearby you, or you have house lights that are on somewhere nearby you. So you can't go outside and it's just dark. But has anybody ever been camping, where you, and we're not talking glamping. We're not talking where you can take your tent and then set your generator up. We're talking out camping, and it's dark. Okay, and you ever have to get up out of your tent and go to the bathroom? It's you don't want to wander too far away from your tent in the dark, way out there. This is where the shepherds are. Keep and watch over their flocks by night. Verse 9, and an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. So you can kind of imagine, if you're there, here's what happens. You're there, and it's dark, and you're watching sheep. Okay, I don't know if this is something that people really aspired to. Ooh, when I grow up, I want to be a shepherd. And suddenly, it's bright. Do you know how you would respond? I don't have any clue how I'd respond. But I would probably respond like the shepherds. Suddenly the glory of anything shows around me, and I'd be very afraid. This is where we're going to look today. Okay? So, I want you to notice a few things about that part of the story. Like I said, Jesus is coming to the darkness, and what's going to happen is somebody's coming into the darkness. And when you see in that same region. That's what it says in verse 8. In that same region. That gives us a little clue, not just to what was happening then, but also to, I think, what's happening now. Because, you and I know this, there is darkness all around us. Just like the shepherds who were out keeping watch over their flock, in the same region, there are people in Jerusalem. There are people with their lamps running. There are people that are having conversations. They're not outside the city, but in the same region, where some people are experiencing light, there are people who are experiencing darkness. And it's no different than what's going on around here. Like there's a national news story, and it turned out horribly last night. In Onslow County, a little girl, Mariah Woods. The whole country's been looking for her. There was an Amber Alert. And first part last night, they said it wasn't a search and rescue anymore. It was a search and recover because they'd arrested somebody. And then late last night, you maybe got notification on your phone, or you watched the news and they'd found her body in a pond. And this is it's an hour away. Like there's darkness all around us. Many of us went to bed last night. We didn't have any worries about if we were going to wake up and go get our kids out of our crib or out of their bedroom. And yet an hour away, there's somebody who did just that, and their child's dead. There's darkness all around us, and it doesn't even have to be that far away. There's darkness around us. Even in this room, there are people who are wrestling with darkness, and they need the light of Jesus to come and give them some kind of hope. So, who's in the darkness? We know from the story, in the same region there were shepherds. Shepherds are in the darkness. That's where they work. But who were the shepherds? Who were the shepherds? Anybody have any clue what kind of status the shepherds had? If you've ever been around church or heard some of these stories, you may have heard before that shepherds aren't exactly what they call high class. They're even a little bit lower than working class. In other words, they were forbidden from even taking part in some of the rituals and entering into some of the places that the regular Jews were, because they were considered unclean. That's who the shepherds were. And if we were to look around Greenville and look around the people that are in our neighborhood and even some of the people around here, a lot of times there are people that we don't know what's going on, and we're happy to not know what's going on. There are things that are happening in our town that we don't know about, and we're happy to not know about it. There's that one house that you drive by on your way through the neighborhood, and you're like, man, that guy's weird. Like, I've never seen anybody there, or when I have, there's just something creepy about him. And that's all that we know. But we don't know really what's going on, except that there's darkness. But we don't even think of it in terms of that. Why? Because it's really, really easy to miss or ignore the darkness. It's really, really easy to realize and miss that in Pitt County, it's close to 25% of our community lives at the poverty level. Now, part of that is skewed because we have college kids. Okay? And so there's a lot of poor college kids. But there's still a number of people who, they here at Ignite, there's a closet over there where they fill up backpacks for backpack pals. Why? Because there's a number of kids that live in Pitt County that wouldn't get food over the weekend if somebody didn't feed them. But some of us don't know. There's I'm trying to remember if this was, I think it was in Pitt County alone. And I think it was last year. There's about 140 kids in foster care that are available to be adopted. You may or may not know some of them. You may not know that. Do you know how many got adopted? 2. There's a lot of darkness around. There's, we're going to be doing family stuff and looking forward to who's coming or where we're going, and then there's these foster kids that have no family, no forever home. You didn't know. It's easy to miss. You may not know this, there are refugees that live around here in Greenville. Maybe you didn't know that. There are international people who have moved here to Greenville. They don't even speak our language. Maybe you didn't know that. There are sex traffic victims We've talked before about Chris and Anna Smith and the Anchor House. They're doing work with that, with sex-trafficked boys. They've built a house. They're the first one in the nation to bring light into that kind of darkness. But it's all around us, and a lot of times we don't know because it's really, really easy to miss or ignore the darkness that's around us. And so where are the shepherds? They're in the same region where all these people are gathered around in Jerusalem, and they're doing their thing, and nobody's noticed them because they're just outcasts. Now, you could ask anybody in Jerusalem, hey, do you know where the shepherds are? And they'd say, sure, they're over there. Now, some of us have been down to 3rd Street. It's in West Greenville. And 3rd Street is a generational project to try and bring change to a community that desperately needs it. They're totally different than a lot of us. They live differently. They have different family structures, different ideas, different jobs, different mentality. And it's not going to change overnight. But like Karen's there on a regular basis. We go as often as we can. Every 3rd Saturday, you go down there and try and just serve that community. And they're going to be doing it for decades to make a difference. Some of us, we don't even like to drive through there because it's really easy to miss or ignore the darkness. But you could say, hey, what are some of the down areas of Greenville? You'd be able to say, oh, well, like that area. You just kind of want to stay out of that area. And that's what people would say about the shepherds. Well, they're not here. They're out there. And so there's darkness all around us, and it's easy to miss. But you can find it if you look for it. You can find the darkness. Is it not doing its thing? Am I stuck? What? Nope. It is. That's that. And that's that. There we go. Did you ever see that? Okay. And did you see this? There we go. Okay, now it works. Gotta love technology. We can find it if we look for it. When we look at what's going on here, in the same region there were shepherds, and they were out in the field, and they were keeping watch over their flock by night. And God had something that he wanted to share with them, and so he knew that there was darkness, and he knew where to find it because he was looking for it, and that's why Jesus came. And we know that there's darkness. I don't know what darkness it is that you're aware of, whether it's in your family, local, just direct or extended family, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it's places that you drive by or in your work. Don't know. But there's darkness all around us. It's easy to miss. However, we can find it if we look for it, and that's what happens here. Because we see that God wants to bring light into the darkness because that's what light does. It moves into the darkness. And so he sends Jesus. And in verse 9 it says, and so an angel of the Lord appeared to them, these guys that are in the darkness, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. And sometimes that happens. But do you know what an angel is? Anybody know what an angel is? Like the word that they use in Greek is angelos. Angel. Okay? Really technical. But you know what it means? It doesn't just mean angel. It's one of those words where in Greek, a lot of times what we do, like baptize, we have a picture of that. It's like, like we pour or we dunk some water on somebody. But the Greek word is just baptizo. It's just baptize. An angel, we know what an angel is, but what is an angel really? It's a Greek word that we just go, angel. So what it means is it means the messenger. An angel is simply a messenger, and this is a angel of the Lord, a messenger of the Lord. That's it. It's just a messenger. Maybe you didn't know this, but I want to drop a little truth on you. That if you are somebody who has chosen to follow Jesus, you're kind of like an angel because you've been given a message that you're supposed to convey. You and I have something that we're supposed to convey. We're supposed to be the gift of light and go out into the darkness and share what we know. And that means something. That means this. That means that you and I can actually do kingdom work. You and I get to do the same kind of work that these angels are doing. And a lot of times we totally miss that. We forget about it. We don't even think about it. We're like, no, that's just a story. It doesn't connect. Like, we leave things like this big gap between what Scripture talks about and what we've been invited into. And you and I have been invited into the kingdom work. And so, to kind of give you an example, see if you understand. Like, in my house, obviously, there's less and less people as they get older and older, but there's people in my house. And particularly, like, my wife has started working full-time, and so that means I'm home more because my two girls we still homeschool them, and so Sarah and Hannah are there. And at various times throughout the day, somebody may interrupt me, and they might want to say, "Dad," and then I know by that tone that some story is coming about the other one. "Dad, Sarah did," or "Dad, would you tell Hannah to?" Okay? And so what I have an opportunity then is to make them an angel. And I say, "You go back and you tell your sister." And then they go back and they say, "Dad said." And it solves the problem. Because they are now an angel of the Father. They get to go and deliver the message that Dad has given them. And so it's really that simple. When you're part of the family, you get to carry the authority of the one who sent you. And so if you're a follower of Jesus, you get to carry the authority of the one who sent you. And so when you're delivering a message of light, if you're delivering the good news of the gospel, if you're telling anything about Scripture to somebody, you're actually carrying the same authority as the one who sent you. And so when I tell my kids, "Go tell your sister," or I can even say, "Go tell your mom, here's what's happening," or they say, "Go tell your dad," mom says that. You know, the message matters, and it's on the authority of the one who sent them. Okay? I don't have to listen to Hannah. She's 11. But if Hannah comes and says, "Mom told me to tell you," I have to listen. Because it's Mom. And if I send one of them to go and talk to the other one, they have to listen because it's Dad. And so this is kind of the good news. Like, you and I get to do kingdom work because we are messengers that have been sent. We get to be the gift of light. And so look at what Jesus did. Jesus is the example. And Jesus in John chapter 8, I'm just going to look at a few verses here. In John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus said this. This is what's written about him. Again, Jesus spoke to them. He's talking to some people. And he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Okay, so Jesus says, "I am the light. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness," because light casts out darkness. Light moves into the darkness. "But will have the light of life." In other words, you're going to have the same power, same authority as Jesus does if you follow him. That's good news. You get to do kingdom work. Not only that, we are expected to do kingdom work. If you back up and you look in Matthew chapter 5, it's the beginning of the Beatitudes, Jesus is talking and Jesus says this. He says, "You," okay, this is you, you, and you. "You are the light of the world." You are the light of the world. "A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light." The light moves into the darkness in all the house. But you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Okay? I think that's good news. If Jesus is the light and he says that anybody who's in me will not walk in darkness, but you'll be light, okay, that's great. And then he says, "You are the light. City on a hill can't be hidden." You don't light a lantern and put it under a basket. You put it up where everybody can see. This is what you and I are. And because of that, you and I get to do kingdom work. And so let's just look at a couple things that I think we can learn from the shepherds and what happened when the angels came to talk to them in verse 9. And so in verse 9, when the angel of the Lord appeared to them, the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. Well, when you look at this, they were an angel of the Lord. They were a messenger. We've covered what that is. Here's all you have to do. If you're going to be the gift of light, all you have to do is be who you are. Okay? They were an angel. They were a messenger of the Lord. Guess what? They just acted like a messenger of the Lord. You and I are sent to be light. All we have to do is act like light. We don't pretend. Any of you, anybody know who Chris Pratt is? Okay, he was in The Office. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy. Anybody know what's going on with his Facebook page? Have you heard this? Apparently there's somebody who wants to be him because apparently people think he's really cute. And so if you are Chris Pratt and you Facebook message young women, say, hey, baby, I'd like your number. Some of them are gullible enough to send their number to this guy who is not Chris Pratt, but is pretending to be him. This, Hollywood movie star. And so that's not what we're supposed to do. You just be who you are. And a lot of us, what we do when it comes to being light is we try and put on this cloak of light and we try and look like what we believe a Christian should look like. And so we do or don't do what we think Christians should do, and that'll make us light. And we're pretending, okay? Because when we get around other people who are, like we get around these friends and I'm going to act like light, and we get around those friends and I'm going to act like not light. And we just pretend. Maybe you've heard stories before. I remember there's people who have imitated doctors. There's a guy who actually got arrested because he presented himself. I don't remember the whole story, but I remember seeing pictures. He presented himself as like this cosmetic kind of doctor. Like he would do procedures on people. And there were women who wanted a big booty. And so they would go to him and he would inject them with big booty stuff. Like cement. No lie. He put cement in their butts. I can't remember the other things that he put, but there's a picture of one of these women who ultimately died because of the stuff that he put into her. He went to jail. But there's a picture of her, and she has got this big old butt. Oh, yeah. But it was hard as a rock because of what he injected into her. Because he was just pretending. There's a guy in Florida who was an 18-year-old, and he pretended he was a doctor. He actually got arrested. They shut down his business. He started another business and got arrested again. Okay, I tell you those stories because this is what you and I look like when we try and pretend to be followers of Jesus. When we try and pretend to be the light. When we spout off with one of those truisms that sounds Christian, but we don't really believe it. We don't know it. We couldn't explain it. We're not. And so the only way that you and I are going to be kingdom work of being the light is to understand who we are and then be who we are. Don't pretend. If you're not a believer in Jesus, don't pretend. If you are a believer in Jesus, don't pretend that you're a better one than what maybe you really are. It's okay. It's not admirable, but it's okay to screw up every once in a while. We all do that. But it's not okay to pretend that you're perfect. Because none of us are. So just be who you are. Warts and all. So, the angel of the Lord showed up. It was just who they were. An angel of the Lord. What did they do? They appeared. An angel of the Lord appeared. Okay? Well, the messenger of the Lord, if you're going to deliver a message, you kind of have to show up. Right? If you're going to deliver a message, you kind of have to show up. The angel of the Lord appeared to them, appeared to the shepherd, went to the darkness, it was about to become light. We'll get that in a second. So if you're going to be the gift of light, you need to be who you are, but you also need to just do what needs to be done. And sometimes it's as simple as just show up. All you got to do is show up. Look, Jesus did it. Jesus came into the darkness. He did what needed to be done. The angels did it. They went out to the shepherds. They did what needed to be done. So the question is, will you or I do what needs to be done? Will we go out into the darkness? Will we go out to the people that are forgotten? Will we go to the areas that are just ignored, that are maybe deemed unsafe or undesirable? This is the question for you. Well, I'll say it because this is how I think. It doesn't mean everybody should do it, but if you've been around here for long, you know that I'm kind of a hugger. And, hopefully I'll never get accused of anything, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. I read of a guy who is a police chief, and he's literally said, I'm quitting hugging because I don't want to be accused with the climate that we're in. So he's just not going to hug people anymore. I'm not quitting. because there are some people that I see and they just need a hug. You just do what needs to be done. If you're going to be light, you know who you are. You do what needs to be done. There might be people, and this is how I think, there might be people that I really don't want, like my wife is really good with old people. We went not too long ago to the nursing home and delivered blankets that we made. And my wife gets down on their level and she talks to them and, grabs their hands and, whatever. She's great. Me, I'm just a little weirded out because it smells funny in these places and they look like they break, and some of them are just not pretty. Yeah. But you know what? This is a place where the reason we made the blankets and that we went there is because we asked, who are the people that don't ever have any visitors? They don't have any family. They're forgotten. And that's who we made blankets for, and that's who we went to visit. Why? Because we know who we are and we do what needs to be done. Now, maybe you've heard this story. Anybody seen this picture? Anybody know who that is? Who? It does kind of look like a young Shriver. But it's not. The girl on the right, I guess? Her name's Kate McClure. And the dude on the other side, who in the hoodie with the beard, his name's Johnny. And Johnny Bobbitt Jr. And Johnny is from North Carolina. And he's a veteran. And he moved up to Philadelphia for a job. And it didn't work out real well. And that was about a year ago. And so he's homeless. And he's been homeless for about a year. Okay? So he's been living on the streets for about a year. And Kate, she works in an office for the Department of Transportation up in Pennsylvania. And she was driving on I-95. And she ran out of gas. And this guy, who looks a little creepy, if you're a woman stuck without any gas in the middle of nowhere, he walks up to her and finds out what's going on, and he says, "Stay in your car, I'll be back, trust me." So she locks her car, and where's she going to go? And he goes and he takes the last $20 he has, and he buys her gas, and he brings it back, and he puts it in her car. And so she starts going back to where he is kind of staying, like his tent city or the homeless shelter when he gets in there, and she starts making sure that he has a few things, like he's got a jacket, that he's, got some food. And then her boyfriend, who's the guy in the middle, they decide, we need to do something more for him. And maybe you've heard this, because what she did is she set up a GoFundMe and had a goal of raising $10,000 to help him. I checked last night, because it's still going on. Over $395,000 has been raised for this guy. And not only that, they're not just going to hand it over to him. They've brought in a financial advisor and a lawyer to set up a trust fund to make sure that he can't have access to all of it. He wants to give a lot of it away. He was able to buy his dream truck, and they're going to set him up in a house. And people are still giving to it. Last night, I just checked last night, and like 15 minutes before I logged on, somebody had given $20. 25 minutes, somebody had given $6. Over 14,000 people have given to this guy. Why? Because somebody decided they knew who they were, they just want to be light, and they did what needed to be done. Somebody needed help, and they're just going to do what needed to be done. It's as simple as that. And so if we're going to be the gift of light and do kingdom work, we know who we are, we recognize that there's darkness all around. There are homeless people, you and I drive by them. There are some people around town that we drive by, they're not homeless. Okay? You're going to have to exercise discernment. But if we know who we are and we do what needs to be done, we can actually be the gift. We can be the gift of light. And so the shepherds are out in their field, keeping watch. They're the forgotten people out in the dark. But the angel of the Lord showed up, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, because light moves into the darkness. Even though the darkness is all around, when light moves into the darkness, it's no longer darkness. So, when this angel showed up and the glory of the Lord shone around them, what happened? What happened? Like any time that the light shows up, what happens? It's simple. It's not a trick question or anything, and there's a million ways to say it, but I just put it this way. It makes a difference. I don't know if I've told you this story before, but when I worked in Florida, the church that we were at, we'd taken a youth trip, and somehow I had forgotten my key to the church building because we left during the daytime, but we got back at like 11:30 at night. And I needed to get in because there were some kids that needed to, use the bathroom, and not really a good thing to encourage them to go to the bushes. And so I couldn't get in. Some needed to call their parents and stuff. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? And I went around to the corner, and so we had this big sanctuary that was also a multi-purpose room. So they had, basketball hoops that you could shoot, but also they set it up for church. Well, it was Saturday night. They'd set it up for church. I kind of forgot. It's dark. And I was able to pry open, because the door didn't latch, I was able to pry open the door, but I also knew if I did that, I needed to shut off the alarm. And the alarm is not in the big room. The alarm is up in the foyer area. And so I have to book it, because I know how long you have. I need to book it from here, around, through, so I can shut off the alarm. And so I get the door pulled open, and I start doing that. And suddenly I meet some things. And I was running, because I know you have a short time, and I need to make it through a couple doors to get there. And all of a sudden, like, my shin hurts like crazy. I'm falling over stuff, and I realize as I'm wading my way through it, like, picture yourself going through a swamp in hip waders. That's what it's like as I am wading through rows of chairs. And I'm not just waiting, like, I don't know where I am in the aisle, because my first step was like, I'm in it. And so I don't know if I go right or left, which way I get out of it. So I'm just going through it. And so I get through it, and I'm cut, and I'm bleeding and whatever, but I get the alarm shut off, and I think I'm victorious until I turn the light on. Wow. You've heard the expression, bull in a china shop? I took out 4 rows of chairs, 4 rows of chairs, and knocked over about 6 of them. Some of them with my legs, some of them with my hands as I'm trying to get back up. Like, I'm just picturing what it looked like. Okay, can you picture this? Like, if the light would have been on, what would that have looked like? First of all, the light would have made a difference. But because it wasn't there, it didn't make any difference. I'm just sitting there looking like an absolute fool with my leg bleeding, going, thank God there's no windows on this building, and none of the youth saw me. And so I didn't even, I'm like, yeah, I just sat, covered it up. And, yeah, call your parents. They'll be here soon. Next day I walk with a limp. At the end of the day, though, guys, the glory of the Lord shone around them. And so when the light shines, it makes a difference. Now, their first reaction was they were scared to death. And this has happened to some of us before. And one of the things I like to do, I like to scare my kids. Okay? I like to scare people just in general sometimes, because I think the reactions are funny. Okay? And my wife hates it, and I've, for the most part, stopped. But have you ever, been in a room and just kind of stood there knowing that somebody coming in behind you is about to turn on the light, and you just... And they turn on the light, and then... Okay? See, the light's a good thing. And it makes a difference. But sometimes our first reaction is we're scared. Well, when the glory of the Lord shone around them, it made a major difference. And we'll see as we go through this story, they're going to be accompanied by a multitude of the heavenly host. But here's what this means, okay, when it makes a difference. When you and I are light, when we act like the gift of light, what that is it allows us to impact, it's one of our values, to impact and invest. And so we get to make an impact. So when we delivered blankets over to the nursing home, we got to have an impact. And it wasn't just an impact on them. I think those of us who went, it was an impact on us. Those of us who get to go to 3rd Street, and you guys are more than welcome. It's the 3rd Saturday. You remember 3rd Saturday, 3rd Street. Okay? Every 3rd Saturday. You can go for as long or as little as you want. About 8:30, you can go and get a little bit of breakfast, or just show up at 9 and they'll give you a task, and you might work inside, outside, in the neighborhoods. You might meet people. Who knows? If you can stay for an hour, stay for an hour. If you can stay for 3, stay for 3. If you can stay longer, you'll probably be by yourself because it doesn't last that long. It's just a few hours. But we impact and invest when we just go and try and make a difference and be light. That's what kingdom work is. That's being a light. That's making a difference. And it might be something as simple as what somebody did for me one time. I remember Laura and I we had kids. Okay, and we've had kids for a long time. But when they were little, I remember going out to a restaurant, and I remember, I'm sorry, Tyler, I'm going to tell this story about you don't remember. He's not going to be guilty. It won't make him feel bad. But I remember, like, when we would go out, if a kid used to pitch a fit, they'd be in the high chair, and it's like, you need to eat your peas, and they're like, blah, blah, doing that or whatever because they're just in a mood. Okay? Well, pretty soon, they want just the juice or something. Okay? And I don't remember what it was for him, but we were at a restaurant one time, and Tyler is just being an absolute pill, and he's screaming or whatever, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm not going to try and talk gently to you or anything. I'm just not. So I take him in his high chair, and I'm just like, you can scream at everybody else here. We're going to have dinner. And so I just turned him around so he's facing the rest of the restaurant, and Laura and I are just eating, and they're just ignoring him. And it took him about 2 seconds. He went, like, you done, buddy? Yeah. Okay, no more whining. So somebody saw that. That can go one of two ways. Like, you're a jerk parent. Can't believe you would do that. But that's not the way it went. Somebody saw that and they came up afterwards. We finished eating and, we fed them and whatever. But they came up afterwards and they looked at us and I'm like, I saw what you did with your kid. I don't know how to respond to that. So luckily they kept talking. They just looked and they said, you're doing a great job. Just keep being consistent. Just love your kid. I can tell you love your kid. And they left. They didn't pay for my meal or anything like that, but that made a difference. Because they were older. They knew who they were. They were a parent. They knew that Laura and I were a little exasperated because we got this kid and very little sleep and we're out to eat and he's acting a fool. He doesn't even know it. It's not like you're going to blame a 1-year-old. And so he did what needed to be done. And because that guy did that, it made it that much easier the next time we were out to eat to remember, hey, you know what? That made a difference. And so what do? I'll go out, and when we were out the other day, this was a long time ago, we were at the movie theater, and it was like a Tuesday where movies are cheaper, and there was this mom, and I don't remember what movie it was, but it was a kid movie, and this mom had like 4 of them, and she's shuffling them in and trying to get them or whatever. I stopped her right in the middle of the steps and said, you are doing a great job, because she was getting upset. Like, you're doing a great job. It'll be fine. Why? Because it makes a difference. It might be something as simple as that. Maybe just be an encouraging word when you can be light. But you can make an impact. You can invest in somebody else with something as simple as your words. How do you do that? Obviously, there are thousands of ways. I just gave you a couple. There's thousands of ways. There's thousands of gifts. And if we're going to be the gift of light, just remember that you and I have to move into the darkness. Okay? The shepherds were in the dark. They were the forgotten people. But that's where the angels went. That's where the messengers went. Because there's darkness all around us, but somehow Jesus entered into our darkness. And when we see darkness, you and I just need to be the light. And the best way to do that is this. Go somewhere where it's dark. When you go out to lunch after church, when you're shopping during Christmas, you see somebody who's just exasperated, or maybe there's just an old man because you're at a mall and he's just lonely. Go say something. Go sit down next to him. Go say hey. Encourage that cashier who's working. Go into the darkness. Maybe you're going to be even more bold than that. Maybe you're going to go to the neighbor that you think is just weird when you drive by it, like that house. There's something about them, and like they never wave, or they're creepy looking, or whatever. They never mow their lawn. Whatever it is, I don't know. Go to them. Go into the darkness. Know who you are. Do what needs to be done. Maybe invite some other people with you, but that will make a difference. But you're going to have to go somewhere. You can't wait for it to come to you because darkness is all around us. You, a lot of times, miss it. We ignore it. We covered this. But we'll find it if we look for it. And when you do, go do the kingdom work that you have been commissioned to do as a messenger of God. And go and be light. Go somewhere. And what I want to hear is I'd love to hear some of your stories. Now, a lot of you have my phone number. Just text me. Like, hey. And it's not bragging. Okay? What this is, when we ask, like, these things right here, these marbles, when we have these things and ask you to put them in and just let us know what God's been saying to you or how you've seen him at work, all that is us bragging on how God has used us. It's not bragging on us. And so, would you just share some of the stories of where you've gone and what you've done? If you go out to eat today, I really do. Just something as simple as this. Look at your waiter or waitress, your server. And before they leave, after they bring the food, they bring the food and they go, okay, is everything okay? Say, yeah. Before you go, we're going to pray for our food here. Is there anything that we can pray for you about? It's as simple as that. Try it. Now you're going to feel weird. Get over it. You're going to feel weird. But if there's any darkness going on, go ahead and enter into it. Because that's what you and I are called to do. Because all around us, just like there are shepherds in the same region, there's darkness. And we have something we can offer. So let's go do that kingdom work.